But we start today with LeBron James out of LA. More news has surfaced that he will be missing extended time, at least another 2 games to that injury that he sustained with his ankle. Re-aggravated it, experienced additional soreness. So he's going to be missing at least the next 2 games. Here's the thing if you're the Lakers. Right now, they're the 6th seed in the Western Conference. They're about just a half a game back. If not, they're tied with the Dallas Mavericks right now, 37-28 for the 5th and 6th seeds in the Western Conference. They're jockeying right now. But they just completed game 1 of what's going to be the most difficult 5-game stretch for them this year. They're facing 5 consecutive teams that are at least in the playoffs. They just faced the Nuggets. They've got the Clippers tomorrow night, the Trailblazers on Friday night. Then they've got the Suns and the Knicks, all teams that are destined to make the postseason, that have already qualified and reached the postseason with a berth. But when tragedy strikes, there's always the 5 stages of grief, right? You've got anger, denial, then anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. Those are the 5 stages of grief. The Lakers have just experienced the first 4 of those stages. And now they're finally in the what's called the acceptance stage. Because the reality is the Lakers are in dire straits right now. Now, not to the point where I don't think they can compete for an NBA championship, but with regard to the fact that this is becoming more and more of a reality, that they could very likely be in the play-in tournament. Anthony Davis just said, "We're back," to his teammates after they beat the Denver Nuggets 93-89 a couple days ago to KCP. But even he will acknowledge and understand that the Lakers right now mentally are gearing up for the playoffs. For the play-in tournament. This was a play-in tournament that they simply scoffed at earlier in the year. They simply dismissed it, simply brushed it aside. And what's become more clear, what's become illuminated, is by LeBron's injury, an extended injury, that this play-in tournament may very likely actually transpire. And it's that acceptance period that was so difficult for these Lakers to accept. LeBron vehemently opposed a play-in tournament, right? We remember how they treated this potential play-in tournament, and that's the mindset is, hey, we're above this tournament. We don't need to play in this because we won't be in a situation where that could become a reality. Now that it is, suddenly the tone is changing. We're seeing them hopefully play a little bit more together, a little bit more intense. It's almost as if you've got an unathletic friend, right? You've got an unathletic friend who you've seen run a couple 3 10-yard sprints, and all of a sudden they're gassed. So you make a bet with them. And you bet them that they cannot complete an entire mile without stopping. They're the unathletic friend. And if they can do it, then you will go run an entire marathon. And so you're chuckling, and all of a sudden you're watching your friend start to engage in this mile, and he's gassed, but all of a sudden he's through to the final lap of the marathon, of the mile. And all of a sudden you're taking a step back and saying, wait a second, this might become more and more of a reality that I'm going to have to prepare myself for the marathon. So you once chuckled, but now this is becoming more and more of a reality. And that's the situation that the Lakers find themselves in right now. A hypothetical scenario is now closer and closer becoming a reality, right? The kid's running a mile. All of a sudden, a nice cool breeze brushes him in the face. He's re-energized, and there's a good possibility he could finish this mile. But again, all of this hinges on LeBron's health. We've talked about this before. And LeBron even came out and said it. If he's not 100% healthy, Doesn't matter where this team is, doesn't matter where they're seated, doesn't matter if they're in the play-in tournament, if they're the 10th seed. Doesn't matter if they're the 3 seed. If LeBron James isn't healthy, they won't go very far in the postseason. And that's what's the most amazing thing through all of this is once again, the individual driving force, the sole driving force behind the Lakers resides in a guy who's 36, 18th season in the NBA. And he's still the catalyst. We all thought Anthony Davis would take the mantle. That hasn't happened yet. And it's amazing, again, in his 18th year, that an ankle injury could be the difference between potential ecstasy and misery for the Lakers this upcoming season. So it's getting close. It's getting close. We're ramping up. 2 weeks left in the NBA's regular season before the play-in tournament starts. And it's going to be interesting to see whether or not the Lakers, whether or not some of these other teams can actually make some final pushes as we approach the NBA's play-in tournament. And speaking of